It feels like every day there's just this avalanche of information coming at us, and trying to figure out what's actually important, well, it's a real challenge. That's what we're trying to do here. Cut through the noise, zoom in on what truly matters. And today we're going deep on some big moves happening in Bitcoin and the whole crypto world.
It's definitely been a wild ride lately.
We've got a lot to unpack. Price swings, a new announcement from the government, some interesting insights from a recent crypto summit, and we'll even dive into some data straight from the blockchain.
Plus, we can't forget about all those broader economic forces that always seem to be lurking in the background.
Right. Always got to keep an eye on those. But yeah, our mission today is to connect those dots for you, help you understand not just what happened, but why it matters. So let's jump right in. Bitcoin, well, let's just say it's seen some action recently. Quite a drop, actually.
We have seen a pretty significant price drop. The data shows Bitcoin down to about $80,000. And to put that into perspective, that's the lowest it's been since all the way back in November.
Wow, November.
Yeah, and it's down about 25% from that peak we saw in January when it was over $100,000.
25%, that's a serious move. And I saw headlines about billions, like just wiped off the market. How much are we talking here?
Yeah, estimates suggest something like $110 billion of market cap gone in just 24 hours. And a lot of the initial explanations were pointing to broader economic jitters, concerns about those escalating trade tensions, those tariff policies under the Trump administration. That kind of uncertainty tends to make investors a bit skittish, especially with assets like Bitcoin.
Yeah, those tariff wars, they always seem to send ripples through the market. So was it just a straight drop, or did we see any kind of recovery?
Well, there was a bit of a bounce back. By midweek, Bitcoin had climbed back up to around $84,000. But it really highlights how volatile things are right now.
Still kind of on edge. And I think I even saw some analysts talking about the possibility of it dropping even further. What are they looking at?
Right, so some analysts are saying that if these current support levels don't hold, we could see Bitcoin dip even lower, maybe down to that 73,500 to 75,000 range.
Yeah.
So, yeah, still some potential downside risk there.
Okay, so we've got this price volatility, and then bam, this big announcement from the White House about Bitcoin, a strategic reserve plan. I think a lot of people were surprised by that. Let's break down how the market reacted to that and what this plan actually means.
Absolutely. So last Thursday, President Trump signed this executive order creating a U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve. And at first, there was a lot of buzz, especially given all his talk during the campaign about making America a crypto hub.
Right, you'd think that would be a pretty clear positive signal for the market. So what happened? Why the hesitation, even some negativity?
Well, it comes down to the details. When you dig deeper, it turns out this reserve is only going to be filled with Bitcoin seized in criminal investigations or civil forfeitures. The government's not planning on buying any Bitcoin directly to put into this reserve.
Oh, I see. So it's not really about active investment. It's more about managing assets they've already got their hands on. Big difference. And probably not what a lot of people were hoping for. I bet that played a role in that sell-off we saw.
Almost certainly.
Yeah.
Investors were probably picturing something much bigger. The government actually stepping in and buying Bitcoin, putting their money where their mouth is.
Right.
And when that didn't happen, well, there was some disappointment. And we saw that reflected in the price. Bitcoin dropped by as much as 6.5% on Monday.
Yeah, makes sense. But even with those limitations, there are still some who see this as a positive move, right? At least in the long term.
Definitely. Matt Hugin over at Bitwise Asset Management, he has this interesting take. He says that even this kind of limited step, just creating the reserve, it shows that the U.S. government is taking Bitcoin seriously. It's acknowledging that Bitcoin has value, could even be a strategic asset, something important on a geopolitical level.
Okay, so not just a digital currency, but a potential tool in international relations. Huh, interesting.
Right. And some say this is a crucial first step, even if it doesn't have an immediate impact on the price.
Okay, so this announcement comes right after the White House crypto summit. Did the sentiment from that summit match up with the whole strategic reserve thing?
Well, the summit definitely gave off a much more broadly positive vibe about the administration's stance on crypto. You had key figures like Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and David Sachs. He's the administration's main guy on all things crypto, both really pushing this pro-crypto message.
And I heard that even Trump himself was talking about some pretty big plans for crypto, right?
Yeah, he actually outlined this vision of a digital Fort Knox with Bitcoin right at the center of it all, along with Ethereum, XRP, Solana, Cardano, the whole gang. So this wasn't just some vague endorsement. It was a pretty clear signal that the government's approach to crypto is shifting in a major way.
So on one hand, you've got the summit, very forward-looking, positive about crypto's future. Then on the other hand, this reserve plan, which was maybe a step in the right direction, but didn't really live up to the hype.
Yeah, kind of a mixed message there. The summit was all about embracing crypto, but the reserve plan, well, it didn't quite match that level of enthusiasm in the short term.
Interesting. But despite that, the CEO of Binance, Richard Tang, he actually said that this shift in U.S. policy could trigger a global pro-crypto domino effect, with other countries following suit. That's a pretty bold prediction.
Yeah, it is. I guess we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But it's worth noting that the summit wasn't all smooth sailing. There were some questions raised, concerns about potential conflicts of interest.
Oh, right. I remember hearing something about that.
Yeah, particularly with David Sachs. He had some pretty significant personal investments in various cryptocurrencies. And to address those concerns, to kind of, well, to avoid even the appearance of impropriety, he actually sold off about $200 million worth of his crypto holdings.
Wow, 200 million. Okay, so a lot happening on the government side. But let's shift gears for a minute and look at what's happening on the Bitcoin network itself. I've been hearing about some pretty big moves from some of the big players, the whales and sharks. What's the data telling us?
Yeah, so despite all the price volatility, the data coming straight from the Bitcoin blockchain, what we call on-chain data, it tells a different story. It looks like Bitcoin whales, those are the guys with wallets holding at least 10 BTC, they've actually started accumulating Bitcoin again.
Oh, really? After that period where they seem to be selling.
Exactly. And we're not talking small potatoes here.
Mm.
Sentiment, they're an analytics firm, they say that since about March 3rd, these whales have added almost 5,000 BTC to their holdings. That's a pretty big shift.
That's a lot of Bitcoin,
Yeah.
especially when the overall sentiment seems to be, well, what some have called extreme fear.
Right. The Crypto Fear and Greed Index, which is basically a measure of how everyone's feeling about the market, it hit a near 3-year low earlier this month. So lots of anxiety out there. But these whales, they seem to be seeing something different.
So you've got the average investor feeling nervous, maybe even panicking a bit, but the big guys are loading up. That's quite the contrast. What are the analysts making of all this whale activity? Think it could mean something's about to change.
Well, a lot of analysts are saying that this could actually be a sign that things are about to turn around. They're saying these big players, they're the ones with more information, more experience. They're seeing value at these lower prices, and they're getting ready for a potential upswing. But they're also watching that $85,000 resistance level. If Bitcoin can break past that, it would really add weight to the idea that a bull run is coming.
So maybe those whales are onto something. Okay, so we've got some potential positive signals on the Bitcoin network itself, but let's zoom out again and look at the bigger economic picture. Because it seems like there are some worries there, especially about inflation.
Inflation is a big one. Larry Fink, he's the CEO of BlackRock, he recently talked about the risks of inflation, and he specifically linked those risks to President Trump's tariff plans. He's concerned that those tariffs could lead to inflation sticking around for longer, which make it tough for the Federal Reserve to, loosen things up, adjust interest rates and all that.
And this is all happening just as we got the latest consumer price index numbers, right? What did those show?
Yeah, the CPI data came out on March 12th, showed a 3.1% increase. Now, that was a bit lower than some economists were predicting, but it still means that inflation is above the Federal Reserve's target. And at first, when those numbers came out, some people were hoping that it might mean the Fed could start cutting interest rates sooner than expected, which would generally be good for riskier assets like Bitcoin.
But Fink's warning kind of put a damper on those hopes, didn't it?
Yeah, his concerns about the tariffs, plus, tools like the CME FedWatch tool, which is showing a very low chance of a rate cut at the next Fed meeting, it's all making people think that higher interest rates are here to stay for a while.
And how do higher interest rates usually affect Bitcoin and the crypto market in general?
Well, higher interest rates tend to make those more traditional investments, like bonds, more appealing. So investors might shift away from riskier assets like crypto. And that's why some analysts are worried about more panic selling if Bitcoin's price keeps dropping in this kind of economic climate.
So it's a lot to take in. We've got uncertainty around trade policy, a new Bitcoin reserve plan that's generating mixed reactions, positive vibes about crypto from the White House, big players loading up on Bitcoin, and then this looming threat of persistent inflation and higher interest rates. It's like all these forces are colliding right now.
Exactly. And trying to understand all these different angles, that's what gives you the real picture. You can't just look at the price going up or down and think you understand what's happening. It's about seeing how all these pieces fit together. the macroeconomics, the government actions, what investors are actually doing on the Bitcoin network, it's all connected.
It really makes you think about the bigger picture. I mean, this is the U.S. government we're talking about, actually holding Bitcoin, even if it's just seized assets for now. What does that mean in the long run? And how is all this going to play out with the global economy, the evolution of crypto, everything? It's a lot to ponder.
It is. And as you follow all this, it's worth asking yourself,
Yeah.
how are these different trends, these geopolitical moves, the technology, the economic forces, how are they all going to shape the future, not just of digital assets, but of the whole financial system? It's a fascinating time to be watching all this unfold.
It definitely is. All right, well, that wraps up our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the ever-evolving world of Bitcoin and crypto.
Oh.
Absolutely. See you then.